In this video, I am going to share with you the process of making this beautiful frock for a 1-year-old. So let's get started. Hey guys, welcome to DIY Crafts. So for this, I am using 2 strands of 4-ply acrylic yarn and a crochet hook of size 4.5 mm. Now I am going to start by making a foundation chain. Make chain 56 and put a stitch marker at regular intervals. Here I am going to give the count to where to put the stitch marker. So that's first chain 13. Put the stitch marker into the 13th chain. So this first chain 12 gives the shoulder part, and that stitch marker stitch will give the corner point. And then make chain 14 plus 1, which means chain 15. So this chain 14 forms the front part of the frock, and the 15th chain here gives the second corner. Put another stitch marker into that 15th chain. Again make chain 12 plus 1. So 12 chains forms the second shoulder part, and then the 13th chain, it's the third corner. Put the stitch marker into the 13th chain. Now finally make chain 15. Just cross checking the chains here. Now make last chain 15. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. So as this 15th chain is the last chain, I am not putting any stitch marker, but if you wish you can put one stitch marker there also. And once all the chain 56 is done, hold the chain straight such that it doesn't have any twists, and then make a slip stitch into the first chain to form a neckline. So as I am making it as a square neck, these stitch markers helps me to guide through the corners. So begin with chain 2 and count this chain 2 as a first double stitch in your row 1. Then make one single crochet stitch in each and every stitch until you reach the first stitch marker point. If you want, you can keep a count on it. As we have 12 chains in the first phase, we will get 12 double crochet stitches, making one double stitch in each and every stitch. So just count while you are making it, and it will be far easier. Once all the 12 double crochet stitches are done, we have reached to the stitch marker stitch, and into that particular stitch we have to make 3 double crochet stitches into the same stitch. So remove this stitch marker, and now into the next chain make 3 double crochet stitches. So this gives the corner turn that requires to give that square shape to the neck region. Now to mark the corner, to work for the next row, I am going to put a stitch marker into the middle stitch of this chain 3 DCs. So this way we will not miss any corner space. So that's middle stitch gives the corner for the next row. Now continue to make double crochet stitches across the front neckline, and here the pattern remains the same, like you have to make one double crochet stitch in each and every stitch until you reach the corner, and into the corner you have to make 3 double crochet stitches. So here I am making the last double stitch. Now we have reached the stitch marker place, so remove the stitch marker, make 3 double crochet stitches into the chain as it is the corner, and then put the stitch marker into the second double crochet stitch to mark the corner for the second row reference. So this stitch markers guides us easily to get the required shape. And now I am doing the third side make 1 double crochet stitch in each and every chain until you reach the stitch marker chain. And now into that marker stitch, remove that stitch marker and make 3 double crochet stitches into that chain. That's 1, 2 and 3. Now put the stitch marker back into that middle stitch and then continue the same pattern. Make 1 double crochet stitch in each and every chain. And finally we will reach the last chain, that is the 56th chain, and into that chain again make 3 double crochet stitches. So I did not put any stitch marker here, but you have to remember that the last chain is a corner chain. So into this chain make 3 double crochet stitches. So that's 1, 2 and 3. So this forms the square neckline. Now make a slip stitch onto the top of the second chain of the first chain 2. So for the second row, I always prefer starting the row and ending the row from the corners. So for that I am making chain 2 and then pulling out the tail end from the middle stitch of the corner. So this way my rows will begin and end from a corner. If you wish, you can just continue to start the second row and then end the corner and then make a slip stitch onto the side. But this one is much easier version for me. So for the second row, begin with chain 3 and then make 2 double crochet stitches into the same stitch, and this gives the corner for the second row. Now continue to work the side of the square shape. So make 1 double crochet stitch in each and every stitch. So just carefully identify the stitches while you make the second row. As we have pulled out a chain to the corner, it might be a little difficult for the first few stitches. Then make 1 double stitch in each and every stitch until you reach the stitch marker stitch, that is the middle stitch of the corner 3DCs. So remove the stitch marker and then into this particular stitch make 3 double crochet stitches. Again put a stitch marker into that particular middle stitch, and this stitch marker helps us to identify the corner stitches at each and every level and each at every row. Now again continue to make double crochet stitches across the side until you reach the next corner. From here on the pattern keeps on repeating. We have to make 1 double stitches on the sides until you reach the corner stitch, and into that corner stitch you have to make 3 double crochet stitches and again put the stitch marker, and again continue this pattern of 1 double stitch and 3 double stitches in the corner until you reach the starting point. Once you are done with the second row, here I am making the last double crochet stitch. And then put a stitch marker onto the top of the third chain. Now make a slip stitch onto the top of the middle stitch to reach the corner, and into that particular stitch make another 2 more double crochet stitches, and again repeat the same pattern. Make 1 stitch on the sides and 3 double crochet stitches into the corners, and likewise continue until you reach your required arm depth hole. So this is how the square neck looks like. So identify which sides of the square is your front neck and which side of the square gives you the shoulder. So if you remember, we have 12 stitches for the shoulder and 14 stitches for the front line. So mistaking it might changes the shape of your final outcome. Until you reach the armhole depth, you have to keep on adding rows. So once you have required shoulder to shoulder gap and the required arm depth, we are going to give the partitions for hand and the body. So once it is done, making the last slip stitch And this is how the project looks like after completing 4 rows. Now this one, you can identify the corner stitches and you can consider any of the sides as your front and back sides. And now once the measurement is sufficient, I'm going to do the partition for the hands and the body. So begin with chain 3 and make 1 double crochet stitch into the same stitch, which means we have an increase. Now the other part of the hand where we have the stitch marker for the corner, we are going to skip all the stitches in between this corner stitch and this first corner stitch. So skip all those stitches, and all these stitches will form the hand part, sleeve part of the frock. Now into that stitch marker stitch, make 2 double crochet stitches. So the hole formed here gives the armhole for the frock. You can put the stitch marker away. And now we are working the front part of the frock. Make 1 double crochet stitch in each and every stitch until you reach the next stitch marker stitch. So once you reach the stitch marker, here is where we have to make the partition for the second sleeve. Remove the stitch marker and into that stitch make a DC increase, that is 2 DCs into the same stitch. Once this increase is done, skip all the stitches from this first corner till the next corner space. Remove that particular stitch marker and into that corner stitch make 2 double crochet stitches. So the space in between these 2 stitches gives the gap for the second sleeve. And then continue to make 1 double crochet stitch for the back side of the frock. Continue to make 1 DCs until you reach the starting chain 3 stitch. Now after making the last double crochet stitch, make a slip stitch onto the top of the third chain. Now if you can see, this is the base structure for the frock. As we have made the partitions for hands and the body, now it gives a nice shape to the body. Now continue to add height for the frock until you reach the waistline length of the frock. For this, you just have to add the rows, which means make chain 3 and then continue to make 1 double crochet stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row, slip stitch to close the row, and continue like the same way until you have the desired height until the waistline. Now once the waistline is reached, this is how the project looks like. Isn't this cute? Now let's start working on the flare of the project. Make a slip stitch to close this row. Now for the flare part, you can choose any kind of cluster you wanted to work with. Here I am showing one of a kind. It's begin with chain 3 and make 2 double crochet stitches into that same stitch. Now make chain 2 and into the same stitch make 3 more double crochet stitches, which means in one single stitch we are working 6 double crochet stitches with 2 chain gap in between. Now skip the next chain and into the later chain make 3 double crochet stitches, chain 2 and 3 more double crochet stitches into the same stitch. You can adjust the flare part by skipping the number of chains in between. Here in this project I am skipping 1 chain. If you wish, you can skip 2 chains and then you can continue to work the same cluster stitch in each and every chain alternatively. So 3 double stitches, chain 2 and 3 double stitches into the same stitch. Here you might be wondering why you have left 1 chain in the first stitch and 2 chains for the next stitch. It's just that the count didn't set well with my project, so I just adjusted one chain here. So repeat this pattern throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now into that last chain, I am working the last cluster of 3DC, chain 2 and 3DC into the same space, and after that make a slip stitch onto the top of the first double stitch, or if you can even make a slip stitch onto the top of the third chain of first chain 3. Once the slip stitch is made, continue to make slip stitches until you reach the chain 2 gap in between the two 3DCs. Now we are going to work the second row cluster stitch into this chain 2 space. So begin with chain 3 and make 2 double crochet stitches. After that make chain 2 and make 3 double crochet stitches all into this same chain 2 space. So we have a cluster in the middle of the cluster, and the next row cluster will be in this chain 2 space. So after the first cluster is completed, we are going to make the next cluster again into the chain 2 space of the next cluster. So make 3 DCs. That's the third DC, chain 2 and again 3 more DCs into the same stitch. Then one more cluster into the next chain 2 space. Now we are going to repeat this pattern throughout the row until you reach the starting point. So 3 DC, chain 2 and 3 DC. Likewise, continue this pattern throughout the row. So if you want to add the extra flare after few more rows, you can add one chain space in between the cluster stitch works, which means after completing the first cluster of 3DC chain to 3DC, add a chain so that the flare gets automatically increased. If not, you can just continue making the same cluster stitch over a cluster stitch, which will automatically give you a decent flare. That's good enough for a frock. So continue to add cluster stitch over a cluster stitch until you have the required height of the frock. So usually it should be approximately to the knee length of the baby. So you have to calculate that and add the height according to it. Now you can add any kind of embellishments and you can decorate the frock however you wish to add. Like here I have added few flowers. Aren't they cute? And that's it. Your soft fluffy baby frock is now ready. Make it a complete set by adding a pair of crochet shoes, cap, jacket, etc. I hope you all enjoyed watching this tutorial. Do give this pattern a try and let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. See you all in the next video. Thank you for watching. Please like the video, share it and subscribe to DIY Crafts.